Hey everybody, it's Krishanti with Krishanti.com, and I'm so excited to be here with you today because I have two of the most incredible goddesses here, and we're going to talk all about energy healing, specifically the Bengston Energy Healing Method. So let me introduce them to you. First, we have Jennifer Hall. She's in the beautiful purple shirt, and I'm going to read her bio because I don't want to get anything wrong here. Jennifer Hall is a longtime practitioner of many and varied healing modalities, including homeopathy, plant medicines, and other energy based practices. Since learning the Bengston Method in 2016, she has included this both as a standalone treatment and as an integrated component with her other practices. Jennifer works with a wide range of issues, including chronic pain, Lyme, cancer, emotional issues, etc. She works with shifting limiting beliefs and trauma as well. And we also have Laura Shalliker. Laura has been working with the Bengston Method since 2012 and has been a practitioner with the public since 2017. She is also an educator and hypnotherapist who appreciates the enrichment which the Bengston Method brings to all of her other practices. Like Jennifer, she works with a wide range of conditions from physical illness to emotional and psychological struggles. Laura has been fortunate to see the effects of using the Bengston Method in the lab, having worked with both mice and cancer cells in this controlled setting. So, welcome both of you. Thank you so much for being here today. And
Such a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
hmm
would you please describe a thumbnail description of the Bengston method for the audience?
Shall I just go ahead, Jen?
Go ahead.
Um, Thumbnail. The Bengston method is this eminently teachable way of gaining access to the frequency or the space by which you can offer healing. And it started with Dr. William Bengston decades ago. He came up with this method uh, in answer to his own question as to whether the kind of healing that he'd been able to get to from working with another naturally gifted healer was something that could actually be taught. So it can be taught. It's very exciting. That's my favorite part of this, is that anybody can learn. Anybody who's listening to this right now, you can learn how to do this method. And it starts with making a list, and you'll probably hear us talking about the list many times. That list of 20 items, personal desires, selfish, as we say, um, everything from small minutia to great big desires. Um, you find a moment in time when that desire is fulfilled. You take a snapshot or an image from that moment. You find a moving system, a pinwheel, a clock face, something that in your mind's eye that moves by which you attach these little images to. I know this is going fast, but when everybody does the workshop, you'll you'll come to understand it. And you move those images quickly, and the faster you go, the less you can hold on to them. And by the time you are rapid image cycling, as we call it, or cycling for short, you're somehow in this space where you can have a passing intention for healing for another person or animal, plant for that matter, and it's a real thing that happens. It's really phenomenal. So it takes a little bit of patience to learn how to do the method, but anybody can do it. And then you have to have tremendous fun seeing magical things happen.
And you both learned the method yourself and are teaching a workshop actually in April of 2025. Guys, if you're interested, I'll link to that below. But we have ongoing Bengston method workshops um, because that's the whole point of this. It is teachable, and we can learn how to do it and master it. And with that, Jennifer and Laura, what drew each of you to this method?
Well, I kind of came in through the back door. I was, I started out as an artist and had no real interest in healing whatsoever. But because I had some chronic health issues and my husband also had some problems, we discovered that the regular medical establishment didn't always have answers to things. And we, for example, I had a really bad back issue that was keeping me from doing anything. And I kept going to the doctor, and they just kept saying, like, yeah, well, we'll try and see, it'll get better. And then finally, my doctor had x-rays taken and was like, oh, you need surgery right away. And I'm like, now he says that. And I just felt like that wasn't the answer. And I kind of figured it out on my own. I started noticing that if I made micro, tiny little movements, I started feeling better. My back started hurting less. And at the same time, because I'm an artist, because I have miles and miles of imagination, I kept trying to picture what was going on with my back and give it different information. And I would imagine myself, this was going on in the spring and summer of one year. And I knew that come winter, I wanted to be skiing. So I kept imagining that my back felt so good, I was able to go skiing. And amazingly, after a very little time, what I thought, this had been weeks that it was going on, and suddenly I started feeling better. I could walk, I could go up and down stairs, I could move without any pain anywhere. And so that was one of the first things that started making me think, hey, there's other things going on that we just don't know about. And so, because of that, I became very curious about alternative methods of healing. And that just led me from one practice to another to another. So I was happily working as an artist. And then because I started learning so many things, I wanted to put those into practice too. So I started a part-time practice doing healing work with people. And from there, what happened? Oh, so one of my clients, I worked with a lot of people who had cancer, and one of my clients who came in with cancer had asked me about what I thought about the Bengston method because she had had radiation and chemo before, and was healed from breast cancer, and then came in with liver cancer, and she was concerned that any kind of alternative method wouldn't work because she said he had said they don't go together. And I remember thinking like, huh, that hasn't been my experience because I've had people, in spite of those therapies, that they healed. So I didn't really pay attention to it. And then it came up again from another friend of mine. And I looked at the website, and at that point in time, I thought, well, he's working with a lot of people with cancer. And at that point, I was working with not so many. And so I didn't really pay attention to it then. And it wasn't until I ran across his book and audiobook, and I got them just to see what was going on. I put on the audiobook, and it was quite a few years ago. So I put it on my iPod. I went for a walk with the dog. An hour and a half later, I come back and go like, oh my heavens, I can't believe it. It's so, in some ways it's similar, in very many ways it's very different than what I was doing. So I got really excited about it. And that's how I got into it.
It's a great book. Laura, how about you?
Um, so for me, I think I've always been kind of a seeking person, but I really became energized around wanting to understand the nature of reality, honestly, when I watched my dad die of pancreatic cancer. And that was in 2010. And many amazing things actually happened at that time. But this really just ferocious desire to understand more. And, um, incidentally, it might not be such a bad thing to learn more about healing because there's nothing but cancer in my dad's side of the family. Um, so the thought that I might be able to be of help, perhaps at some point in the future, to others in my family, myself maybe. Um, and plus, as I became aware that this hands on healing, so called, was a real thing, which 20 years prior I would have thought was absurd, to be honest with you. That was not my background growing up. My background growing up was very um, academic. My father was a professor, my mother was an RN, right? But I started to recognize that these were real phenomena, and it said something about the nature of our reality as well. In any case, ended up finding Bill's recordings, uh, went ahead and followed them, and was actually doing the rapid image cycling, so that anybody who might have the opportunity to listen to those recordings, they really are excellent. However, by the time I finished the recordings, I really didn't know where I was at with it. This was sort of a new thing for me, and I kind of set it aside. And then a few months later, out of the blue, I asked myself about it again for some reason, realized I hadn't gone online and looked at Bill Bengston's website, did so, and there was a workshop, 3 weeks later, going to be had in my area across the bridge from where I live. It was very mystical. It was very magical. It really was. And so I went to that workshop, and that was in 2013, I think. And that's, yeah, the rest is history. I just was hooked. Yeah.
That is awesome. And so you both use this and you've integrated it into your existing practices. What has surprised you most in using the Bengston method as opposed to other healing practices that you're used to or accustomed to working with?
Well, I would say that it's really simple. Once you learn it, the difficulty is kind of getting the cycling down and getting it quick fast enough, I think. And but after that, once you're running it, and it's just like anything else that you try, any skill or talent that you try to pursue, whether it's learning how to play a guitar or whatever it is. It takes a little bit of practice, but once that happens, what to this day is still shocking is how effortless it is. Um, all it requires is an intention in terms of, and a very fleeting intention as to where you're directing the healing to a person or to an animal or whatever it is. Um, and then kind of letting it go. There's not really any attention. You can be doing You could be working with your client, talking to them. You could be So what I do a lot of times is with my clients, I'm either on the phone or on Zoom, or I do distant work. So doing distant work, you can do anything. You could be having a conversation with another person. You could be going on a walk. You could be doing your dishes, like we like to joke about with John Levac, who's another Bengston practitioner. So that seems really remarkable to me, that the less attention you give to it, probably the better it works.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's so fascinating.
It is really fascinating. And also that you can transmit it, or I don't think that's the correct word, but that you can charge water, you can charge cotton, and those become ways that you could use them, drinking the water or putting the cotton on your body, and that gives you a healing from the same method.
I love
Yeah.
that. Love the cotton and water. Laura, what surprised you most with Bengston?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I was just thinking about what Jennifer was saying too, that the fact that you have this fleeting intention once you learn how to do this method, and just as Jennifer's saying, you don't have to be applying yourself to it. In fact, it's better if you don't. That tells us something about reality. I just don't know what, but it's very interesting.
Very
But
profound.
what's that?
It's very profound.
It really is. The whole thing, I mean, this is quite the journey to learn how to do this and explore it. But I think one of the things that surprises me the most is that it's real and it works. Um, I'm someone who can, I mean, it's so difficult in the everyday world if you're working with a person, especially with this method, and they get better. They have cancer, they get better. I'm someone who would say, how much of that was me? 20%? 40%? 0%? I mean, it's very difficult to disentangle all the ways that we exist and all the very many things that we're doing to feel like, yes, this method really works. Which is why this miraculous thing of being in the lab was so great, because in the lab it works. And so the fact that it works is just endlessly surprising to me. I'm always amazed, and when people and animals get better and you're working with them, it continues to surprise me. It's just amazing. Yeah.
And that dovetails beautifully into the next question I think you guys are going to want to hear about too. I would love Laura and Jennifer to hear some of your favorite healing experiences with this method. So who'd like to go ahead first?
Oh, healing experiences. And are you talking about in terms with clients?
Yeah. Or
Yeah,
yourself, or any like there's so we have so many
I
stories.
know. There's so many stories, right? Well,
Yeah.
let me think. So in my practice, I work with a lot of animals as well as people. I worked recently with a horse who had a tumor really close to their eye, not in the eye, but really close. And so they didn't want to do surgery. So this horse's person or owner um, tracked me down, got a hold of me. And so I started working on the horse. And it wasn't very long. It was probably, well, it was probably a few, it was within weeks that it was very noticeable that the tumor, which was very bulgy, started disappearing, started going down. And probably within 6, 7 months, it completely disappeared. And so it was really surprising. Um, I have another example. I worked with a man who's about, oh, well, I'm trying to remember. This was 2 or 3 years ago because COVID was still happening. I worked with a man who was about 60 years old, and his daughter contacted me, actually. She was an RN who contacted a friend of mine who's also an RN. And so my friend had told her about Bengston. So she had gotten the book and was kind of interested in it. Her father had a farm in the Midwest in Kansas, and he was experiencing increased fatigue for probably the past 3 or 4 months when I started working with him. And it was really unusual. And, he was used to working 10, 12 hours a day and having plenty of energy afterwards, but he was coming in at home and then finding himself just dumping himself in the recliner and falling asleep. And he started realizing he was sleeping probably 2 to 4 hours more every night and still feeling this fatigue. At, Also, he noticed that one of his legs was kind of off. Like he felt like when he was walking, he was kind of dragging it a little bit. So his gait was off. So, anyway, when she contacted me, he had just been to his primary care doctor. And so they started doing a bunch of tests with him. They found like he was great cardio, his organ function was wonderful, digestion, everything was pretty good. So what they had decided to do was um, schedule an MRI that was going to happen in about a month. I start working on him, and within a couple of weeks, he starts getting headaches and having a little cognitive problems, and the headaches were getting worse. So he goes back to the doctors. They decide they need to do an emergency MRI. They do that, and they discover that he has a uh, tumor, a brain tumor that because of its location and its size was not a good candidate for surgery. So things the thing is when you're working with Bengston, there are times where you expect things to get worse before they get better because it's a natural healing thing. But nobody really ever likes to hear after you started working on somebody that things are getting worse, and this seemed really drastic. And they put him immediately because of his condition. They put him on palliative care. I'm not exact, and they put him in the hospital. I'm not really certain exactly what that entailed. I do know that later on he was put on immunotherapy, but within a few weeks or pretty quickly, his symptoms started getting better. And they continued to get better and they continued to get better. And so the doctors were really surprised, but they were also very cautious about that. They didn't really know what was going on. His leg problems started getting worse. I think he had um, problems with a little bit of losing feeling in his legs as well. So he ended up going from when he got better enough to go into rehab. And then he started continuing to get better with that as it progressed to the point where his tumor, when they finally did scans again, it had shrunk and it just continued. I kept working with him and it kept getting smaller. So that was really rewarding. He's now, I mean, for the last couple of years, he's been back working just normally and doing all the things he liked to do. So pretty exciting. That was a very,
Shall
it was a really good outcome and it was wonderful.
Mm.
I happen to think of it because I've had other cases similar to that, and I'm always shocked how
I
they
think
work
it's
out.
great that he kept going even though it was at the worsening stage. He knew it would just you just get through that and it would get better.
Well, hopefully.
Yeah,
You never know. But yeah, it worked. It definitely worked.
that's
Yeah,
a
it's a
remarkable thing.
challenging
I know.
world of experience. I mean, Bill Bengston always says that the people who stick with this method, that is to say, well, both the healers too, but the healees, the recipients, are either the craziest or the bravest he's ever met because
Yeah.
the healing journey can be challenging. It can be miraculous and quick, but it can also be very challenging. It depends.
It's not like what we expect per se.
Yes, for sure.
Um,
Yeah.
Laura, would you mind sharing a couple of your healing stories?
Um, yeah, well, I'll start with an animal too. This is one of my favorite ones to share because this little puppy dog was, his person sent me a photo and he had Cushing's and he had all kinds of secondary complications to the Cushing's and he looked horrible. The picture came to me. I'd never worked with Cushing's. I had zero confidence that I could do anything for the dog. And the picture was quite off-putting. I really felt like, ooh, this animal's in bad shape. And so I was very honest with his person and said, I don't think I can help. I mean, I can try, but and he wanted me to go ahead and try. And this dog responded instantly. It was unbelievable. He started to get better right away.
Mhm.
And his fur started to come back, and all the swelling and redness in the tissue started to go away. And this is one of those rare, by the way, this is rare, right? I mean, a quick response like that is very rare. So it was extremely fun for me because first of all, it was just plain old fun. Second of all, it was one of those rare occasions where I did get the feeling that it was what I was doing that was making a difference. You know, I could always second guess myself, but I think, yeah, I think, and it was just beautiful how happy the dog became, and he was already a senior dog. And we didn't overcome the Cushing's. The Cushing's was not eradicated. However, he went into being a really quite healthy and ebullient and bubbly little critter. And over the next couple of years, which was a normal lifespan that he was able to live, every once in a while his person would contact me and say he needs a little extra help. Could you help him out? And I would work on him because this initial working with him was relatively short. I mean, I think I only worked on him consistently at the beginning for maybe a month or two, once or twice a week, which is not very long actually. But every once in a while, I'd be asked to work on him again, and I would be told that the puppy would always get the zoomies after I worked on it. It was just a really fun case, so fun. And when the dog actually passed, it was really interesting because I had been asked to work on him again, and this is this sort of profundity of this method because I couldn't I was not particularly interested in working on him this last time. And which goes to one of the things that Bill always encourages is like you work on people or animals if you want to. There's no mandate, once you learn how to do this, you don't have to, right? And I felt like I didn't really want to. I kind of tried to find him. I couldn't kind of feel like I was connecting with him. It was really interesting. And his person pushed me and said, if you wouldn't, he's still not doing so well, would you? So I really made the effort to connect. And I knew, now this is not necessarily part of the healing. This is kind of veering off into other sorts of aspects of what we might explore with this method. But suffice to say, I knew the animal was dying. I knew that this was not going to be a zoomy situation. And actually, his people really knew that too. But it was sort of, it kind of makes me a little verklempt because, you know, they kind of knew it already. And my being able to sort of validate that, I think we were all able to invite this transition for the puppy in a way that was not desperate to heal him anymore. It was more like, okay, we're going to settle into, at least that's how I experienced it. So it was a beautiful whole sort of series of experiences with this puppy dog. And one of my favorite human cases was a woman who had colon cancer, and it had been diagnosed through imaging in the colon. And we worked together, and she was just very interested in exploring her life deeply and really diving in, really using this method and working in all kinds of ways she had available. And she did decide eventually to have surgery. And they did, they went in and looked at the tumor before, well, there were two tumors, I believe, two or three, prior to the surgery, and the tumors had transformed. And that was really fun because you don't often get an internal visual of changes happening like that. So it seemed pretty clear to us that the work that we'd been doing had transformed these tumors from very angry, clearly malignant tumors to, much smaller, pinker, more, symmetrical and all of that. And she had a successful surgery. She opted not to do the chemo radiation. I think she did one chemo session. It was awful and decided not to do anymore. But she completely recovered and is doing great. So that was just fun because we got to see that visual. Yeah.
Yeah, and we work with a lot of different types of things. Like Bengston works well with cataracts, with um, heart problems, with all kinds of different things. And it's also tricky to know what the dosage is because some people seem to be taking more Bengston than others. So you can't really compare very well. You can have 5 people
True.
with the exact same diagnosis and they all respond very differently and need different things. So
Very
that part
good.
is interesting too. And when you're working with animals, if you get a chance to work with animals, um, in person, they're really great because they tend to come towards you or want to be near you if you're cycling, or maybe you're doing hands-on healing with them. But when they're done, they tend to get up and go and say, yeah, done, whatever time that is. So that's kind of fun too.
Mm.
And it's fun how they position their body like right to where they want you to put your hand, like they'll move.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's so
Oh,
true.
but guys, what do you think, and how can you tell everybody what makes this method different from others? Because there are a lot of other healing methods out there, and I know Bengston is like so unique, but can you share with the audience like your experience about what makes it so different, like how it stands out from what we already have in the field?
What do you think, Laura?
Yeah, I was going to say that I think for me, and Jennifer has a much broader field of experience than I do with other of these modalities, but um, to me, part of what makes it really different is that it's completely faith free, as Bill would put it. It's ideologically free. There's no dogma associated with it. So no matter what your personal beliefs, you can learn this method and work with it. And it can be something you add in to other things that you work with as well. So it's very flexible and fluid, it's very adaptable, and it doesn't have any mandate attached to it about the right state of mind that you need to be in, what your particular beliefs are around life and death and whatnot. So it's very welcoming in that sense, right? It's a very fluid, welcoming kind of practice.
It's nice because you can do anything with it. So if you're an acupuncturist, you could be cycling for your patient.
Mm,
It's lovely that way. Uh, Also, it again, I go back to there's not much effort into it. It's not like you have to follow a prescribed steps in terms of how you do it. Like, and it can be more effective. Like I can work with a client using tuning forks, and there's a certain prescribed method that I go through that, and I'm paying attention in different ways. And that's the thing, I'm always paying attention. And I don't think that it can have the same, it's very healing and it can heal in profound ways as well as Bengston, but it doesn't heal the same things. Like, I don't think I can use sound healing and necessarily help somebody heal from cancer.
Mm.
mm,
I mean, it can move them closer on the needle, but that's a big difference,
yeah.
which is one of the
And
things
that
that
mixing, like you can use the tuning fork with the Bengston.
with Bengston, yeah. But if it
Yeah,
was separate from the Bengston,
right. And I
it,
can do the hypnotic work I do with the Bengston, and it's actually enhanced the hypnotic work. And I'm not alone in that. Many practitioners, Krishanti, you can probably speak to this too, will do have other methods that they work with, and when they add on this extra layer of the Bengston, because you're not efforting it, it is very, you just get it going and let it go. It
Yeah.
somehow can support and sort of activate something new in these other resources that you can work with. It seems to me. I mean, I've had that
yeah.
experience.
Also, if your if your client is whatever therapies they're doing with their doctors, whatever medication they're on, whatever supplements they're taking, whatever kind of anything that they're doing, if they're doing hyperbaric chamber stuff, whatever it is, it can improve the outcomes of that therapy.
You know,
Just incredible.
It's really incredible.
And, back to what we started out talking about, that this method is teachable, where we have workshops like ongoing. Do you both really think that anybody can learn this method and like anybody could take a workshop, practice, and do hands-on healing, do distant healing, do effective remote healing? Like, I mean, I feel like you believe that, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. And I'd like if we should share more about that with the audience who are eager to learn if they can do it themselves too, really, you know. So I think a lot of
yeah.
methods say that they can, and then people feel like maybe not. But Bengston seems so different in that respect to me.
I asked Bill that question when I was relatively new to the practice. I was lucky enough to be able to ask him some questions early on, and I asked him, do you really that exact question, like, do you really think anybody can do this? And he just said yes. If you learn how to do the method, yes. Now it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody is going to want to work as a practice, doing healing work. That's a whole other bailiwick. But can you learn how to cycle? Can you work with it in some way in your life? He said yes, and I believed him. And I've only had a couple folks that I've sought to teach who have not learned how to do this method. And in my experience, or my sense of that was ultimately just wasn't that interesting to them to learn how to do it. It was really just not what they wanted to do. Fair enough.
Yeah.
But it wasn't because they couldn't. At least that's my takeaway. I think it was just not that interesting. I think if you really want to, yeah. Jennifer, what do you? I mean, do you?
I think that's exactly how I was going to answer it. If you're interested, you can learn it.
Mhm.
You really can. And it's interesting to watch people. Some people pick it up quicker than others. Um, some will start out with it and they'll come. I just talked to a friend of mine who took the workshop maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and he's like, "Hey, I did it. I didn't quite pull it together, and now I'm really interested." And within a very short amount of time, he's like off and running with it. So sometimes it's interest, sometimes it's timing, sometimes it's whatever it is, but everybody can learn it, definitely.
That's awesome. Now, there's another aspect to Bengston that we have yet to go into. Can you share with everybody how this method works as a self-development tool? Because it's not just for healing. That list-making process is very deep and transformative.
Mm.
So, or Jennifer, would you mind speaking to that a little bit?
No, Jen, you go.
Oh, so what we ask you to do is make a list of things that you want. And especially at the very beginning, well, it's a selfish list. It's like what you want, not what somebody wants for you or not what somebody else wants. So it's a lot of fun and it's a tricky thing to do. I would say most of the people who take the workshop tend to be of the more altruistic nature, and it's hard for them to go like, "What do you mean? Be selfish. I'm here to help others." So, but the thing is when you start really, let me go back. When I first took the workshop, I wanted to just learn how the method so that I can use it to heal people. I didn't really pay much attention to what was on my list. It wasn't until things started coming off of my list in somewhat unusual ways, um, that I started paying more attention and going like, this is fun. This is exciting. You don't know how things are going to come together, but they come together in really interesting ways. An example of that I can give you: just a couple of weeks ago, my husband and I just bought a used car that we wanted. And it was on my list maybe a year ago. I hadn't paid much attention to it because at this point in time, if it goes on my list, I know I'll get it. So I wasn't really concerned about when it was going to come or how it was going to get here. And that is one of the principal things that we say when you put things on your list. You don't care about how or when. It's as if you already had them. So that's what you're putting on your list, and you're doing very selfishly. But with this car, in the past when we had gotten used cars, I live in a rural area, and so you have to travel a bit to look at a car that's for sale. And so I had decided, because in the past we had got, you might go on a 3-hour trip to look at a car that you don't want. So I wanted it to happen closer to home, and I was thinking somewhere close to me would be Port Townsend or Port Angeles or Paulsbo, even, 20 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour and a half away, something closer. That's what I was thinking. So, and I had different things on about the car that I wanted in terms of the color and the mileage and, all different kinds of things. I wanted it to be dog friendly because we're dog people and like to have them go with us places. So what happened was, um, a couple of weeks ago, we're on the way home from, I had done some errands, and on the way home, my husband, we get our mail from the post office. So he said, "Hey, do you want to stop and pick up the mail?" And because it was Friday, I was like, well, yeah, I think I will. And so he stayed in the car. Usually he would just listen to the radio or something, but and then I was in the in the post office for a little while because I live in a small town, and, you see your neighbors, and so you chat a bit. And so when I finally came out, I saw him outside at our outdoor, uh, bulletin board where you can post different things for sale or just announcements, whatever. And he's looking at one, and then go over and see what he's looking at, and it's a car, and it was just like the Honda that we were looking for, and about the same year and everything. And so we kind of turn away, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's on my list. I mean, it's just so funny. So we're like, okay, should we call about it? Yeah, I think we should. So we called, and it turned out that the woman who owned it she only lived 5 minutes drive from our house. I mean, I could walk to her house. So in the morning we looked at it, we ended up buying it. But the cool thing is making everything about it was better than I had imagined. The color was better, the mileage was better, the everything about it. Um, uh, Meeting our new neighbor who we had a lot of people in common because again, it's a small town, and getting to talk to her and knowing her, she was great, and she hooked us up with an old mechanic that she had been seeing that we didn't think was actually working. So we haven't, besides the car, we have a friend, we have somebody that's really fun to hang out with, and we have a new mechanic. So it's funny how things kind of come together, and that's what makes it fun, as well as you're working with your list and you're starting to put things on your list and you start getting things off your list, you start thinking about what is it that I really, really want? What is it that I want to do with my life? What do I want to change my job? Do I want to change where I live? Do I want to change relationships with people? What is it? And all of those, I don't think I would be asking myself so much if I didn't have this list. And I think that's the part that really we, Laura and I and Krishanti, you too, have taught a lot of people the practice and had practice groups. And you've watched people really, really change over time.
Yeah.
And that's why we think of it not so much of a manifesting thing. It's more of a self-development tool.
Hmm.
You're actually creating your life more consciously.
Yeah, and the it's so interesting because yeah, Bill, when I wish he were here to say yay or nay to this. I'm pretty sure I have this right, but Bill, if I have this wrong, you'll correct me, I'm sure. But my understanding is that he didn't create this method as a manifestation tool. It was just a way to get to the healing space, right? And then he just started to hear from people who were learning this method that, oh, guess what? These things are showing up in my life. So it's become a whole piece of this that people are very interested in and interested in exploring and might just want to focus on, even absent the healing. Maybe you're not so interested in the healing, you just want another way to kind of consciously create your life, as Jen so beautifully put it. But one of the things that I've enjoyed as a personal growth tool is it's interesting to watch my own reactions to how I want to change my list, things that are not showing up, that when I put them on my list, maybe after, I mean, I'm not so focused on things showing up on my list per se, but even so, I'll go over it. I want it to feel alive and interesting and fun, and things that start to feel dead and uninteresting, or they're just not kind of moving for me. Why is that? Why? And this is sort of what Jennifer, to sort of just put another point on that, it gives you such a rich way of going deeper into your own understanding about who you are and what makes you happy. And this can also interface with disease sometimes. It's not an absolute truth, but certainly many people who are struggling with an illness will ask those same questions. And this, who am I really? What is the point of my life? What do I need to change? Etc. What might be adding to my illness? And this, working with this list, is just this incredible way to get at some of that stuff and expand who you think you are and expand what's possible. And then it is incredibly fun to see things show up. At one point, when I was wanting to have a physical office, I mean, I got an office. That was one of those miracle ones. I got an office like within a week of putting it on my list, like the perfect office, totally affordable. This was back in the day before COVID. Now everything is done like this, but
Yeah.
so it is fun to work with, but it can be very, very deep. Yeah.
And what was your experience like in the first workshop that you attended? Like to anybody that's new and interested in attending a live workshop that we have ongoing, the one in April or the ones on the Bengston Workshops website. What do you think people would need to know, like what they might experience in the initial workshop?
I think just come with an open mind, you
Hmm.
know, playful. That's always a big word. Come see what you think. Follow the instructions. You'll
And
get to cycling.
for you too personally, like was it easy for you to just create that like that initial list, you
No,
know,
I
and
had a hard time making my first list.
No.
Yeah.
I think it was a lot of work. I mean, for me, it was too. And I spent a lot of time on it. And I remember at the first workshop, at the end of the day, and I admit we do the same thing, but at the end of the day, Bill said, "Rip up your list and do a new one." And I went like, I spent way too much time on this. But now I don't think anything of it because and what we always talk about, the list is in pencil. You can change it at any moment in time. And and it's fun to do actually sometimes. Sometimes I will have a list and I can't really even maybe I haven't paid attention to it for a while, so I'll make a new list and then I look at it to see what has come up, what surfaced that was also on the previous list. And it's fun running across old lists because I tend to like to write them down on a piece of paper, and it's fun to run across old lists. Like I'll be, cleaning out a purse or looking through a pocket, and I've come up with a new list. I mean, an old list, and it's fun to revisit what I had because there's times where you definitely take things off because you come to a point where you go like, I thought I wanted it, but I don't want it. I don't really want
yeah,
it. Or I want something different.
yeah, even just on that one day, you're like, today I don't
Oh,
want this.
definitely. Yeah. Just on that one day.
But if I go back in my mind to the first workshop, one of the things about it I feel like was um, Bill was very, very unwilling to validate or getting a message. I'm sorry. To validate whether we were doing it right. And this is one of the things. Everybody has their own experience with this. There's a sort of nebulousness to when you get to the actual rapid image cycling. It's very hard to identify, am I doing it right or not? People are always frustrated by that. I was too. And I just remember one of the people in class saying, I'm experiencing like this and this and this. And she was expecting to hear yay or nay from him for sure. And he goes, uh-huh. You could see her face get all red. She was like so frustrated. But I mean, and it is sort of frustrating because you don't get that kind of, yes, this is right and this is wrong. But that's also the fun because everybody has their own experience. So,
One
Yeah.
one of the things I like not only about the first workshop, but about all the workshops is how much I learn from other people because the questions
mhm,
that people ask, a lot of times I go like, I never even thought to ask that. And the answers are so interesting and they make you think of things in a different way. So really, it's a very different experience than trying to learn it on your own. Very, very, very different.
that's true.
And
And,
we're
and
still learning stuff every workshop. That's why we teach it because people ask stuff and, it has to make us think about things. Or they share experiences that are really interesting.
Absolutely.
evolving, it's always changing and
It's
evolving.
evolving.
And so both of you, do you feel like it's valuable to take more than one workshop for people?
I have taken so many workshops. I can't tell you. Long before I thought I was going to ever be involved with this in any practitioner type way.
Mm.
You can because you can also hear the same thing, but it hits you in a new way,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And because this is such a the practice of this can get very deep and stir up a lot of very deep questions and experiences. The opportunity to explore that further with people who are also interested in learning it is just, it's always different every time.
I just
Right.
talked to a friend of mine not too long ago who had taken a couple of workshops, and I asked her, about taking a second. Actually, she wants to take another one, but she said I asked her about her experience, and she said the first one, um, she sort of got the nuts and bolts of it. I mean, she got it down and everything, but it wasn't till the second one that it all kind of came together in her mind and that she felt she was really cycling and really understanding what she was doing.
Mm.
And I've heard that that's very common. I know at least my friends who've taken it, they take it more than once.
Right. So valuable and helpful for
And a lot of
sure.
my clients as well.
So, do you have any closing thoughts for people who are interested or want to explore this world of Bengston and healing and self discovery?
I just say get the book, listen to the audio, take a workshop, or just do it. It is really fun. It's really fun.
Yeah, even just listening to this conversation, if this is some of your listeners, Krishanti's first time hearing about this, which probably isn't if they're listening to you, but even if it is, start off with writing a list. Go do it right now if you want to. I mean, there's nothing like the workshops will get you there, but just even beginning to play with that is it's powerful to begin to explore what we really want, and not in a greedy way, but in a meaningful way as to what can this life offer us, what can we offer this life. It's such a beautiful opportunity. um, I'm really grateful that I encountered it. I mean, it was definitely one of the most significant pieces of that really fiery desire after watching my dad die, that fiery desire to understand more about life. I mean, this has been one of the most powerful pieces of that exploration, I would say. Um,
Well,
yeah.
that is incredible. Thank you both so much for sharing your time with us today. And everyone, I'll link to where you can find out more about Bengston in the section below. And I think that's it for now. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Thank you, Kushanti.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.